Tom Sarge Mitchell had always believed in keeping things simple. After decades of service in the Marine Corps, navigating battlefields and commanding men through unimaginable chaos, he had finally found peace in a quiet, small town nestled in the heartland of America. His days followed a familiar rhythm, rising early to watch the sunrise, tending to his modest garden, and making his way to the local diner for a cup of coffee and a slice of pie. For Tom, this life wasn't just a respite, it was a reward for years of sacrifice. The locals knew him well. He was the kind of man who didn't talk much, but when he did, people listened. His weathered face and sharp blue eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had seen the world at its best and worst. Despite his reserved nature, Tom had become a quiet fixture in the town, a symbol of strength and reliability. The diner staff always had his coffee ready, and the regulars greeted him with warm smiles and nods of respect. It was a peaceful existence, but Tom was no stranger to the unpredictable. The lessons of the battlefield had taught him to expect the unexpected, even in the calmest of settings. The disruption. One crisp autumn morning, Tom sat in his usual booth by the window, sipping black coffee and flipping through the local paper. The town was abuzz with talk of an upcoming festival, and the diner hummed with quiet chatter. Tom, however, remained immersed in his own thoughts, enjoying the solitude that came with his routine. That was when the low, guttural rumble of motorcycles pierced the air. The sound grew louder, drowning out the quiet murmur of conversation and causing heads to turn. Tom lowered his newspaper, his sharp eyes narrowing as he glanced out the window. A gang of bikers roared into the gravel parking lot, their leather jackets glinting in the morning sun. The group, about a dozen strong, exuded an air of defiance and chaos, their loud laughter carrying through the diner's thin walls. They parked haphazardly, their bikes forming an imposing line near the entrance. The leader of the group, a burly man with a shaved head and a menacing smirk, dismounted first. He removed his helmet, revealing a face marked with scars and a perpetual sneer. Rex Crusher Malone was no stranger to trouble, and neither was his gang, the Iron Fangs. Known for their reckless behavior and penchant for intimidation, they had been making waves in nearby towns, and now, it seemed, they had set their sights on this quiet community. Inside the diner, the atmosphere shifted. The regulars grew quiet, their conversations reduced to uneasy whispers. The staff exchanged nervous glances, their cheerful demeanor replaced with a tension that hung in the air like a storm cloud. Marge, the diner's owner, stood frozen behind the counter, gripping a coffee pot as she watched the gang stride toward the door. Tom remained calm, though his posture stiffened ever so slightly. He folded his newspaper neatly and set it aside, his instincts kicking in as he prepared for whatever was about to unfold. The taunts begin. The door swung open with a jingle of the bell, but the sound was drowned out by the bikers' boisterous entrance. They claimed a large table near the center of the room, their loud voices and laughter filling the space. Rex took a long look around the diner, his gaze landing on Tom, who sat quietly at his booth, seemingly unbothered by the commotion. Well, what do we have here?" Rex drawled, his voice dripping with mockery. "Looks like Grandpa over there is enjoying his retirement." The gang erupted into laughter, their jeers directed squarely at Tom. He didn't flinch. Years of military discipline had taught him how to remain composed under pressure, and this was no different. He sipped his coffee, his expression unreadable, as Rex sauntered over to his table. "Nice hat," Rex said, gesturing to the Marine Corps emblem on Tom's weathered baseball cap. "Bet you think that makes you some kind of hero, huh?" Tom met Rex's gaze, his piercing blue eyes locking onto the biker's smug expression. He didn't speak, didn't react, just stared. Rex's grin faltered slightly, but he quickly recovered, leaning closer. "What's the matter, old man? Cat got your tongue?" Rex knocked over Tom's coffee cup, the liquid spilling across the table and onto the floor. The diner fell silent. The other patrons watched anxiously, their eyes darting between Tom and Rex. Marge looked like she wanted to intervene, but thought better of it. The tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Tom didn't move. Slowly, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. His fingers moved deliberately as he dialed a number. When the call connected, his voice was calm and steady. "This is Sarge," he said. "We've got a situation. I need the team." Rex laughed, his loud guffaws breaking the silence. What's this, Grandpa? Calling the cavalry? Who's coming to save you, Santa Claus? Tom ended the call without another word and slid the phone back into his pocket. He leaned back in his seat, his gaze unwavering as Rex continued his taunts. Escalation outside. Rex, clearly unsatisfied with Tom's lack of reaction, gestured for his gang to follow him outside. Come on, boys, let's see what Grandpa's got parked out here. The bikers poured out of the diner, their heavy boots crunching on the gravel. They circled Tom's old pickup truck like vultures, laughing and jeering as they sized it up. One of them produced a knife and slashed the tires, while another smashed the side mirror with a crowbar. The sound of breaking glass echoed across the parking lot. Inside, Tom remained seated, his expression calm, but his jaw set in a way that suggested he was anything but indifferent. Marge approached him hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarge, they're wrecking your truck," she said, her eyes wide with worry. "Aren't you going to do something?" Tom looked up at her, his face unreadable. "I already did." The call answered. The distant sound of engines interrupted the bikers' laughter. It started as a low rumble, faint but distinct, growing louder with each passing second. Rex and his gang paused, looking up in confusion as the noise approached. The townsfolk inside the diner exchanged puzzled glances, their curiosity piqued. Then, over the horizon, a line of motorcycles appeared. The riders were a formidable sight, their bikes gleaming under the morning sun. They moved in perfect formation, their discipline and precision unmistakable. These weren't random bikers, they were the Brotherhood, a group of Tom's fellow veterans who had served alongside him in the Marine Corps. The gang's laughter died instantly as the Brotherhood pulled into the parking lot. There were only 8 of them, but their presence was commanding, their leather jackets adorned with military insignia that spoke of battles fought and bonds forged. At the head of the group was Frank Bulldog Harris, a towering figure with a grizzled beard and a look that could cut through steel. Bulldog dismounted first, his boots hitting the gravel with a thud. He scanned the scene, his sharp eyes taking in the vandalized truck, the jeering bikers, and finally, Tom, who had stepped out of the diner and stood silently on the porch. "What's the situation, Sarge?" Bulldog called out, his deep voice carrying across the lot. Tom walked forward, his steps measured, his calm demeanor never wavering. "These boys decided to pick a fight," he said. "Figured it was time they learned some respect." The Brotherhood moved as one, their presence a stark contrast to the chaotic swagger of the Iron Fangs. Rex tried to recover his bravado, but the unease in his posture was clear. The gang had no idea who they were up against, but they were about to find out. This extended introduction sets the stage for the escalating confrontation, highlighting the stark contrast between the disciplined veterans and the reckless bikers, while building suspense for the unfolding events. The Brotherhood stood in a semicircle, their powerful motorcycles parked behind them, creating a wall of iron and leather that separated Tom and the gang of bikers who had caused the morning's chaos. The parking lot, once filled with the echo of laughter and taunts, now bristled with tension. The air was thick with anticipation as the two groups sized each other up. Rex Crusher Malone, leader of the Iron Fangs, attempted to maintain his cocky demeanor, but the presence of the Brotherhood clearly unsettled him. Unlike his gang, who relied on bravado and sheer numbers, these men carried themselves with a quiet, commanding authority. They didn't need to raise their voices or posture. Their mere presence spoke volumes. Bulldog Harris stepped forward, his gaze fixed on Rex. "You've been making trouble for the wrong man," he said, his voice deep and steady. "This ends now." "A battle of wills." Rex sneered, gesturing to his gang. "You think you can roll in here with your little crew and scare us off? We own the roads, old man." Bulldog didn't flinch. He took another step forward, closing the gap between himself and Rex. The two men stood inches apart, their contrasting energies palpable. Bulldog's calm, unyielding demeanor made Rex's bluster seem hollow by comparison. "This isn't about owning anything," Bulldog said, his tone cold. "It's about respect, something you clearly don't understand." Tom stood a few steps behind Bulldog, his arms crossed as he watched the exchange unfold. His calm confidence mirrored that of his brothers. These weren't just bikers, they were veterans, men forged in the crucible of war, bound by loyalty and discipline. the Iron Fangs push back. One of Rex's men, a wiry biker named Snake, stepped forward, attempting to shift the momentum. "Why don't you all pack up and leave before someone gets hurt?" he said, brandishing a chain and swinging it lazily at his side. Before Snake could finish his threat, Jack Hawk Daniels, one of the Brotherhood, stepped forward. His movements were smooth and precise, honed by years of training. With a swift motion, he grabbed the chain mid-swing, yanked it from Snake's hand, and tossed it to the ground. "You don't want to finish that sentence," Hawk said, his voice low and deliberate. Snake stumbled back, his confidence shattered. The other members of the Iron Fangs shifted uneasily, their bravado cracking as the reality of the situation set in. The Brotherhood's resolve. Rex, sensing his gang's faltering confidence, tried to regain control. He turned back to Tom, pointing an accusatory finger. "You called these guys to do your dirty work, huh? Can't fight your own battles?" Tom stepped forward, his expression unchanging. "I didn't call them for a fight. I called them to remind you what happens when you cross a line." Bulldog gestured to the vandalized truck and the shattered glass scattered across the parking lot. "You think you're tough because you can bully a man and trash his property? That doesn't make you tough. It makes you a coward." Rex's face reddened, but before he could respond, Bulldog added, "We've seen real fights. We've stood against enemies who actually knew what they were doing. You're nothing more than a bunch of kids playing dress-up." Tensions escalate. Despite their posturing, the Iron Fangs were visibly shaken, but Rex, unwilling to back down in front of his gang, made one last attempt to assert dominance. "All right, old man," he said, stepping closer to Bulldog. "Let's settle this, one-on-one, you and me." The challenge hung in the air, the crowd of onlookers holding their breath. Bulldog didn't blink. He turned to Tom, who gave him a small nod. "If that's what it takes to end this," Bulldog said, "I'll give you one chance to walk away after you lose. Take it, or things get worse for you." Rex grinned, mistaking Bulldog's calm confidence for weakness. "Deal." A swift defeat. The two men squared off in the middle of the parking lot, the rest of the bikers and the Brotherhood forming a loose circle around them. Rex cracked his knuckles, pacing like a predator preparing to pounce. Bulldog, on the other hand, remained still, his hands at his sides, his breathing steady. Rex lunged, his fists swinging wildly, but Bulldog's movements were deliberate and calculated. He sidestepped Rex's attack with ease, delivering a single, well-placed blow to Rex's midsection. The air left Rex's lungs in a pained gasp as he doubled over, his bravado crumbling in an instant. The crowd erupted in gasps and murmurs as Bulldog stepped back, giving Rex room to recover. "I told you," Bulldog said, his voice carrying over the stunned silence. "Walk away." The aftermath. Rex, clutching his ribs, looked around at his gang. The Iron Fangs, once so full of swagger, now stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Rex straightened slowly, his face twisted with humiliation. "Fine," he spat. "We'll leave." Bulldog nodded. "You'll leave after you fix what you broke. Start with the truck." Rex glared but didn't argue. He barked orders to his gang, and they reluctantly set to work. Under the Brotherhood's watchful eyes, the Iron Fangs patched Tom's tires, replaced the broken mirror, and cleaned up the shattered glass. The process was slow and deliberate, a public display of accountability that left no room for shortcuts. A lesson learned. As the Iron Fangs worked, the tension in the air began to dissipate. The townsfolk, who had gathered to watch, started to relax, their fear replaced with a sense of awe and gratitude. Marge stepped out of the diner, her hands on her hips as she surveyed the scene. "About time someone put these boys in their place," she said, her voice carrying a note of satisfaction. When the repairs were finished, Rex and his gang mounted their motorcycles, their heads low. Before they rode off, Rex turned to Tom, his expression a mixture of anger and resignation. "You got lucky this time, old man." Tom stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Luck had nothing to do with it. Don't come back." The Brotherhood's bond. As the Iron Fangs roared away, the Brotherhood remained, their presence a reassuring reminder of the strength of loyalty and discipline. Bulldog turned to Tom, a rare smile breaking through his serious demeanor. "Still calling the shots, Sarge," he said, clapping Tom on the back. Tom chuckled softly. Some habits die hard. The rest of the Brotherhood gathered around, exchanging quiet words and pats on the back. They had come together not just to defend Tom, but to remind him and themselves that their bond was unbreakable, no matter how much time had passed. As the Iron Fangs disappeared over the horizon, the sound of their engines fading into the distance, the tension in the diner parking lot gave way to a profound stillness. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the gravel. Tom Sarge Mitchell stood by his truck, his arms crossed over his chest, watching the last remnants of chaos leave his town. The Brotherhood, his old Marine comrades, began to regroup, their relaxed stances a stark contrast to the rigid discipline they had exhibited moments earlier. Bulldog Harris, their towering leader, approached Tom with a satisfied grin, clapping him on the shoulder. "You always did know how to call in the cavalry at just the right moment," Bulldog said, his voice rich with camaraderie. Tom smirked, tipping his Marine Corps hat. "Couldn't let them wreck my truck without a fight. Besides, it was good to see you boys in action again." The rest of the Brotherhood joined them, exchanging quiet words and pats on the back. Their presence was more than just a show of force. It was a testament to the bonds they had forged in the toughest of circumstances. They were not just a group of bikers. They were a family, one that would always answer the call of a brother in need. The town's gratitude. As the bikers dispersed, the townsfolk began to emerge from the diner and nearby shops, their fear replaced with a palpable sense of relief. Marge, the diner's owner, approached Tom with tears in her eyes. She clutched a dish rag in her hands, twisting it nervously as she tried to find the right words. "Thank you, Sarge," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Tom shook his head, his expression softening. "It wasn't just me, Marge. My brothers had my back, as always." Marge glanced at the Brotherhood, her gratitude extending to each of them. "You boys don't know what you've done for this town. Those bikers have been causing trouble for weeks, and no one knew how to handle them. You showed them what real strength looks like." Repairing what was broken. The crowd began to move toward Tom's truck, where the Iron Fangs had spent the last hour undoing the damage they had caused. The new tires gleamed, and the side mirror had been carefully reattached. Even the dents and scratches had been buffed out, leaving the truck looking almost better than before. Bulldog examined the repairs with a critical eye, nodding in approval. "Not bad, considering who did the work." Tom chuckled. "I'll take it." The Brotherhood lingered for a while longer, helping clean up the remnants of the Iron Fangs' mess. As they worked, the townsfolk offered their thanks in various ways: pies, handshakes, and even hugs. One elderly woman handed Tom a small bouquet of wildflowers, her eyes brimming with gratitude. "These are for you," she said, "for protecting all of us." Tom accepted the flowers with a quiet smile. He wasn't used to such open displays of appreciation, but he understood the depth of what it meant to the people around him. For them, his actions were more than just a show of bravery. They were a shield against the chaos that had threatened their peaceful lives. Reflections with the Brotherhood. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and gold, the Brotherhood gathered on the diner's porch, sharing stories and memories of their time in service. The camaraderie they shared was tangible, their laughter and banter a reminder of the unbreakable bond they had forged through years of hardship and sacrifice. "Remember that time in Fallujah?" Hawk said, grinning as he nudged Bulldog. "We thought Sarge was going to tear that supply sergeant a new one when they forgot our ammo shipment." Bulldog laughed, shaking his head. "Sarge didn't just tear him a new one. He made sure we got triple the supplies by the next day." Tom smirked, his sharp blue eyes glinting with amusement. "You boys always did give me too much credit. I just knew how to get things done." The conversation turned reflective as the group shared what their lives had become since leaving the service. Some had families, others had found new careers, but all of them agreed on one thing: the bond they shared was as strong as ever. The Brotherhood's departure. As twilight deepened, the Brotherhood began to prepare for their departure. Their motorcycles gleamed in the fading light, a symbol of their unity and strength. Bulldog approached Tom one last time, extending a hand. "You call us anytime, Sarge," he said, his voice firm. No matter where we are, we'll always show up." Tom clasped his hand tightly. "I know you will, Bulldog, and the same goes for me." One by one, the veterans mounted their bikes, their engines roaring to life. The sound was both powerful and reassuring, a reminder that Tom would never stand alone. As they rode off into the distance, the townsfolk waved and cheered, their spirits lifted by the presence of these unexpected heroes. A quiet victory. With the crowd dispersing, Tom found himself alone again, the parking lot now quiet and still. He leaned against his freshly repaired truck, gazing out at the horizon where the Brotherhood had disappeared. The events of the day had reminded him of something he had always known, but often kept buried: the strength of a shared bond, the importance of standing together, and the enduring power of loyalty. Marge approached him one last time, carrying a steaming cup of coffee. "For the road," she said with a smile. "You've more than earned it." Tom accepted the coffee, tipping his hat. "Thanks, Marge." As he climbed into his truck, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The peace of his small town had been restored, not just by his actions, but by the collective effort of those who stood with him. For Tom, it wasn't about being a hero. It was about doing what was right and ensuring that the values he had fought for continued to thrive in his community. The truck rumbled to life, and as Tom drove down the quiet road, the wildflowers resting on the dashboard, he allowed himself a rare smile. The road ahead was long, but he knew he would never have to travel it alone. His brothers were just a phone call away, and the town he called home would always have his back. In the end, that was all that mattered.